reading some Kant today. His vision of reality is so far removed from what we see today. He had such a moral compass, in that his parents were deeply religious. He himself, especially in his younger academic years, from about 18 to 20, became very much involved in what we consider now to be sort of the rational scientific project. But the piety, sort of the regimentation of his early life stuck with him for all of his life. And that served him well, I think, in so many ways, because it was a driver for ingenuity, maybe, like for steadiness of work and continuation of work, and I don't know there's a better word for it, but roughly that. And that kind of focus and intensity and involvement in a particular way of being, essentially, is hard to come by in our postmodern world, and that sort of groundedness in sort of a moral law within oneself, even if it's not a religious law necessarily. It's Kant had the categorical imperative, but where I just read another article today about soldiers in Afghanistan, where a soldier shot another soldier. No, not another soldier, an Afghan individual. And the other soldier brought a finger as a trophy to the soldier that shot the Afghan, because it was his first kill. This inability these days to take the perspective of other at a mass scale is such a frightening thing, because it is that moral framework from which societies bind themselves and hold themselves together. And so we've lost that second person experience of communion with the other, and holding a space for the other. And instead, radical narcissism has taken its place. That is the total and utter involvement with oneself, and the denial, really, of interiority. Broadly speaking, the inner experience allows you to say, okay, if everything is material, then you are just material and you don't matter. As Bertrand Russell said, roughly, it's not an exact quote, but he said something like, if no matter, then only mind. If only mind, then never matter. Then no matter, rather. Yeah, so it's this radical materialism that leads to sort of a solipsistic, narcissistic framework that allows you to kill an Afghan and use their finger as a trophy. There is, of course, elements within the world that have this terrorist streak. I mean, I'm not going to deny it, that there are people that want to murder massive amounts of others that are maybe non-Caucasian and such, but that doesn't justify in any way the murder of another being. So that's a ramble. But what I've been working on is this framework of integrating what Ken Wilber calls the quadrant theory with the developmental theory. And it fits very nice with Keegan's model, where Keegan says there's a first person, second person, third person, fourth person, and fifth person perspective. The quadrants have, really a subjective, intersubjective, objective, and interobjective space. And so, if you look at this developmentally, I believe there's a pattern here that mimics the quadrants, but it doesn't. Yeah, so you go from first person subjectivity to second person intersubjectivity to third person objectivity to fourth person interobjectivity. However, all four quadrants are always arising. It's just the focus in which one's mind is in is moving through the quadrants and actually coming to a realization of the quadrants, where mind is really just the objectivity of reality. So you might argue that the mind domain itself is sort of third person objectifying stance, but quad you're getting all four quadrants within one's mind as it arises, and the quadrants itself are an objectification of the fourth person perspective, which can only come about at the fifth person perspective. So there is this developmental movement that's taking place uh, through these quadrants, I believe. And if you look at the moral attitude, which really, I believe, stems out of the mammalian limbic system, it allows for emotive capacities. Only mammals have that emotive capacity. Then the human being and our social training through a lot of top-down governance, in large measure, not totally, has had a big effect on minimizing our moral capacity to care and have compassion for the other. And so that's the second person felt sense experience of another being. And so this has been, and to some extent is still being, in large, maybe even more effort is being placed on to eliminate that capacity of perspective taking. And interestingly enough, that is really a high expression of what the human mind is capable of doing and being. Kant himself argued that integrity was the highest value for a human. And I believe you can't pass through integrity unless you have yourself a moral centeredness. That is to say, you yourself believe in yourself. And to believe in yourself, you have to embrace other, which is exactly not narcissistic. It is the movement towards altruism. And so this is sort of, I believe, the groundwork for which we can form sort of sciences of development, which in broad measure is the science of the mind plus inner experience and such, which, from what I can ascertain, is a fifth person perspective. So, be well.